Well, not to rain on anybody's parade, Andrija Puharic is a very mercurial person. Is that what we want to say? Recall that he was the guy who pushed Uri Geller for a long time, and they were forever tromping into the Negev and coming out with blank cassettes that had held the wisdom of the galaxy, but the aliens erased them before they let them return. That could happen here. So that's Andrija Puharic. He's been around for a long time. I mean, you have to, these people are such eccentrics. I mean, you have to just respect people's persistence and survival power. But I think, you know, his scholarship and his notion of the rules of evidence is fairly divergent even from my fairly loose canon. So Allegro is a little different case. Do you all know the book The Sacred Mushroom and the Cross? He managed to hypothesize one of the most radical theories ever to come down the pike. I don't know how true it is, but his theory is that Jesus was a mushroom. And, you know, this would not probably have cut too much mustard, except that the guy was a Dead Sea Scroll scholar of world renown, had a scholar's grasp of Aramaic and Akkadian, and was fully licensed to be one of the people who tell us what the primary documents of Christianity really mean. The problem was, when Allegro got a hold of them, he said, well, what they really mean is that a sacramental mushroom was being grown in caves by Nabateans down around Qumran, and they called it Jesus in order to befuddle the Roman authorities, and created the cheerful theory of the friendly carpenter who tells us to render unto Caesar that which is Caesar's. And this was all a publicity stunt just to keep the Roman authorities guessing. And he claims he has textual support for this. The problem is, you have to be an Aramaic philologist to follow the argument. I mean, the argument is unbelievably tortured. There is a lot of question. There is a peculiar opaqueness about the early history of Christianity. I mean, if we are to try and take it seriously and understand what happened there, then it must be that, first of all, if we believe Christ was a real person, then he must have been born in 6 BC, because there was a conjunctio maxima of Jupiter and Saturn at that time, which is a good astrological event to hang the nativity on, which means then that the crucifixion would have occurred in 27. Well, why is it then that there are no mention of Christ can be pushed back earlier than AD 69? What was going on between 27 and 69? The Gospels are not contemporaneous, and the mention in 69 is not even a sure thing. It's in Suetonius, and he says Jews have recently come to Rome, agitating in the name of their leader Crispus, and that's the reference. And you know, it's puzzling, because take a figure as minor as Mani. Mani is the founder of Manichaeanism. He was born in Seleucia Ctesiphon in the 700s. Well, God, we have Mani's laundry bills. I mean, we know how much he paid in taxes, the nickname he had for his dog. I mean, we have a lot of data on Mani. And so why a figure like Christ should be so peculiarly swathed in ambiguity if it was a real person with these people eager to chronicle it is a little hard to figure out.
Didn't Mani have a big religion going in his own lifetime? I mean, kind of a big organization? Whereas Christ has had 12 guys.
Yeah, I mean, Mani got right with it. I mean, he cultivated the court. He knew how to get his thing going, yeah. if any of you are interested in these kinds of questions and like your data in novel form, read The Transmigration of Timothy Archer by Philip K. Dick, which is a wonderful intellectual romp through all of these issues. It's essentially the fictional telling of the story of James Pike, who you may remember was the Episcopal Bishop of San Francisco and a great enthusiast for LSD. And he died in the Negev under very mysterious conditions. He parked his car and with a roadside map and a bottle of Coca-Cola in 115-degree heat, started walking toward the Dead Sea, and dehydrated and died. And he was very close to John Allegro. You know, I'm not given to conspiracy theory, but you must have been following this whole hassle about the Dead Sea Scrolls. Well, a lot of people think it's because what is written there is incommensurate with Christianity as it has existed for 1,700 years, and nobody knows what to do with this stuff. I mean, it's the equivalent of what do you do with the doctrine of the resurrection if somebody comes up with the mummy of Christ? Well, that's the kind of situation that these Dead Sea Scrolls may place Christian hermeneutics in. John Allegro's book? No, John Allegro died recently. Sacred Mushroom. Oh no, the book by Philip K. Dick is called The Transmigration of Timothy Archer. Yeah.
Are you aware of Edmund Bordozecki's translations?
Oh yes, he's another one.
And what his really tweaking volume was called How the Great Pan Died.
Right.
And it was an expose of Jesus Barabbas versus this supposed Jesus. And so it's, yeah.
Yes, well, the empire never died, which is Philip K. Dick's motto. The Gnostic temperament is alive and well. In fact, there hasn't been a century as friendly to Gnosticism as the 20th since the 4th. So there you have it.
I've read a little bit of Revelations, and it sounds like a description of a purgatory thing.
Well, this has been suggested. What you need to, to put the Gospel of John in, to put the Gospel of John in context, get Charles's book, the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha of the New Testament. And then you see everything that the Church Fathers tossed out, because you see the canon, the New Testament, is a group of accounts that were able to survive the sorting process of the Council of Nicaea. And there was a huge literature which was just tossed out as being too weird. I mean, read the Gospel of Philip, the Gospel of Thomas. Have you all looked at the Nag Hammadi Library? Do you know what this is? The Nag Hammadi Library is 42 texts which were dug up in Upper Egypt in 1948 at a Coptic monastery called Chenoboskion. 42 texts that went into the ground AD 220. Means nobody has been able to put a finger on them since AD 220. It's like a fossil of Christianity in the 3rd century. Well, my God, you can barely map it on to the cheerful religion that we inherit as Christianity. I mean, it is an exotic and complicated situation. It's very well worth reading. James. I'm sure the Metaphysical Bookstore in in Boulder will sell you. James M. Robinson is the editor, and it's called the Nag Hammadi Library. 42 texts reflecting early Christianity, Gnosticism, so forth and so on. Hans Jonas is a brilliant, his book, Gnosticism, The Message of the Alien God to Infant Christianity, if that's not a title to die for. Huh? Oh, the Apocrypha and Pseudepigrapha of the New Testament by Charles. And it weighs in at about 35 pounds. But theological libraries will have it, but it's in the locked case. You don't want seminarians mucking around with this kind of stuff.
If I mention the Urantia book, too, which has about 2,000 pages on the life of Christ and covers those years after 30, I guess after 20 or so.
That's right. The Urantia book is a very spectacular and early example of channeling before it was even named. And very interesting. Of all the channeled material, the Urantia book, for pure grandiosity, puts everybody else to shame, right?
They talk about seeding the planet.
Yeah, well, these are persistent themes, you know. I mean, all of Gnosticism is the perception that we don't belong here, that we are creatures of another realm, beings of light, who, because of some horrible cosmic mistake, have been trapped in the world of matter. And the Gnostics take the Pentateuch, the first 5 books of Moses, and turn it into a nightmare story and say that, you know, the God of this world, which in Jewish tradition is called Yahweh, who is the creator of the world, for the Gnostics, he is not the real God at all. He's the demiurge. He's a kind of mad God who has entrapped the light. And the task of salvation is to gather the light and then release it back to its hidden higher source beyond the machinery of cosmic fate.